I have been following Gary Black for about a year, and I seriously did not expect this at all, although this is good news, so don't worry about that. But look at the catalyst list. Look at number 4 specifically, FSD OEM licensing deal this year in Q4 is Gary's prediction. And why am I making this a big deal? Because it is a huge deal. This is a very different position that Gary's taking now compared to just about 2 weeks ago. I posted this video about 2 weeks ago, not quite, but almost. Steven said that Elon dropped a bombshell on the earnings call, and he was referring specifically to Tesla potentially licensing full self-driving to another automaker, and the fact specifically that Elon mentioned that Tesla is in preliminary talks about licensing FSD to an automaker. Just listen here to what Gary said right after earnings.
This whole thing with having another OEM in negotiation, it's very different negotiating using your charging network versus, you know, the brains of your product. And you've already seen Volvo say, hey, yeah, we want to be in your charging network, but we're not going to see the ADAS autonomy stuff, because that's really, really important. The charging is not that important to us. So I hear people saying, well, they got one OEM on the charging network, and therefore they're going to get a whole bunch of people on FSD. That just doesn't make any sense, because one is really important, the autonomy, and one is kind of, you know, think of an iPhone. Okay, if you're using the same charging base, that's not the same thing as using the guts of the phone. So I don't think anybody on the institutional side thought that was such a deal. And Elon has promised this before. A couple of years ago, he said that he was talking to some OEM about autopilot or enhanced autopilot, and that never turned into anything. So for people to hang their hat on that, to me, that's silly.
And what was it that Steven said right after earnings?
And here's the big one. Are already in early discussions with a major OEM about licensing FSD. This is huge.
Gary clearly does not think there was a bombshell dropped on the earnings call. If there was, it was a bad bombshell. Gary Black went from calling a take like Steven's silly. He did not call out Steven by name, but he did say that thinking this FSD licensing deal is a big deal is silly. In fairness, Gary later tweeted also that it could be big, but it could be nothing. And now it is on Gary's catalyst list. Number 4, FSD OEM licensing deal this year, potentially in Q4. Here's what I think possibly happened. When Gary listened to the earnings call, he felt it was not a good call at all. And that maybe made him feel not great, for example. And here are a few things that he had to say specifically about the earnings call.
The numbers were okay. The call was terrible. The stock being down 10% makes sense to me because the call was so bad. Dumb call. Dumb call. That's like so pie in the sky. When I look at the estimates went down. It's crazy that some people came away from the call thinking this was a good call. It was a terrible call.
I understand how it can be seriously very easy to miss a few good things if you felt really bad about the earnings call. And Gary clearly felt very strongly that the call was a terrible call. And I think maybe that's why it took a little bit of time for Gary to look at all of this again and say, you know what, maybe this is a real catalyst. So for Gary, it took more than 10 days really to get excited about that as a catalyst, as a real catalyst. On the other hand, Steven, he got excited the same day. I gotta give it to Steven on this one. But also shout out to Gary for what seems to me like changing his mind. Many people would just dig deeper into their position instead of changing their mind. So that part I certainly respect about Gary. And also, let's not forget that generally, as far as institutions go, Gary is one of the biggest bulls among all of Wall Street. Now let's see what other new catalysts Gary added to his list. Number 1 is stable auto gross margins throughout Q3 would be a catalyst. We might see some price cuts, although Tesla is not going to produce as many vehicles this quarter, but Tesla does want to probably clear out some of the inventory so that we still have a record quarter. Number 2, the Model 3 refresh, Highland, and possibly Q3. Gary thinks it will be launched this quarter as well. Over the last few days and weeks, we had so many rumors about the Model 3. We had rumors that Tesla already produced dozens of them in Giga Shanghai, for example. We had the super short production shutdown seemingly in Fremont as well. So it is certainly possible that Model 3 is launching this quarter, especially with Model 3 deliveries being delayed in Europe, which is a clear indication that Tesla is not producing Model 3s for the European market, and that possibly, and perhaps probably in this case now, basically tells us Tesla is going to be delivering refresh Model 3s after this quarter ends, which would perhaps result in an official announcement of the refresh at the end of this quarter. At this point, actually, I would be surprised if we don't have a Model 3 refresh out there in Q4. If we get it this quarter, that's great. If we get it next quarter, good. If we get it next year, I will be slightly disappointed. But the Model 3 is not crucial to Tesla's long-term success. What we need to focus on now is the Cybertruck and especially the next generation vehicle, as well as full self-driving. Number 3 Cybertruck deliveries in Q4. Now, Tesla may still deliver the first ones in Q3. Ross Gerber, he thinks that Tesla will deliver Cybertrucks basically on the last day of this year. He sort of means that jokingly, but not really at the same time. Number 4, FSD OEM licensing deal. We went through that. Number 5, Fed's pivot on interest rates in Q4. Target rate probabilities for the next meeting, which is scheduled for September 20th. You can see right here, this is where we currently are. And we do expect that the Fed basically will do nothing and just keep the interest rates exactly where they are. So if we call not increasing interest rates anymore a pivot, then yeah, chances are we will indeed have that. However, if by that we mean cutting interest rates, if you look at the odds here, the first cut is more likely next year only and not really likely this year. If you go further into the year, it becomes a lot more likely, becoming quite likely later in the year, especially around the middle of the year. That's where it starts to get really likely. If you look at what the Fed is likely to do exactly a year from now, we might be about 1% lower in terms of interest rates compared to where we are right now, which should be quite bullish for growth stocks like Tesla stock. A higher interest environment for Tesla stock really is not just a double whammy, it is a triple whammy because, number one, it makes growth stocks not really as attractive because you can just put your money in bonds, for example, and you earn a guarantee, let's say 5% or 6%, or if interest rates keep going up, maybe even a lot more. So a lot of people sell stocks and they put that in government bonds, for example. Why not take 5.01%, pretty much guaranteed? Number 2, people get rejected by lenders, therefore lowering the demand for Tesla vehicles. And then number 3, the most obvious, is the cars get more expensive if you finance them. So you either have to save somehow to afford the same car, or now you have to downgrade to a simpler car, or just don't get a new car yet if you still have a fine car. By which I mean a car that works. I just googled a fine car, and yeah, if you have one of these, you're probably not worried about higher interest rates. Number 6, $7,500 EV instant rebates. Right now, you have to wait basically until the next year until you actually do your tax returns. Only then you see the actual benefit. Number 7, a $10 billion share buyback in 2024. Eventually, Gary is going to be right about that one, just like Elon will be right about full self-driving. And look at this. Number 8, FSD Alpha version 12 level 4 release in 2024. That's basically pretty close to safer than human driving. At least is how I interpret number 8. Number 9, the next generation vehicle basically being released in 2025. And Gary thinks Tesla stock will go to $320 in the next 6 to 12 months. And Gary has some interesting comments here. I believe there will be one or more OEM FSD licensing deals as FSD nears a level 4 alpha version V12. I have removed Twitter free cash flow going positive as a catalyst for Tesla, given uncertainty among advertisers caused by the branding change, and other than selling off existing Model 3 inventories to make room for the refresh Model 3, I don't expect major price changes. And this is actually probably my favorite comment of all from Gary right here. Yes. Either that was by accident and Gary was replying to someone, or Gary has a sense of humor that fits Twitter. I'm still not used to Twitter being called X. I will probably keep calling X Twitter for a while. And one more interesting comment from Gary. Why would any OEM pay Tesla to license full self-driving when you have previously stated full self-driving would be commoditized within 2 to 3 years after Tesla's level 4 release? I think Gary said basically it would be much faster than 2 to 3 years. My impression was that Gary's position is it would happen pretty much immediately. Are you changing your value proposition for Tesla's full self-driving to be more in line with Elon's? Gary says just need one automaker, someone out there that is nowhere on full self-driving. Maybe Toyota? I know Gary didn't change his price target, but he sounds quite a bit more bullish to me. How about you? Does he sound more bullish to you? He certainly sounds a lot more bullish on full self-driving, I think. So that was pretty interesting. Again, YouTube says you should watch this video next, but if you haven't finished watching this video where Elon Musk gets interviewed, watch this one first. My name is Matt Posius. Like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.